reverse engineer as much as we try to. We can't reverse engineer what a convention does in a virtual landscape. You can reverse engineer pieces of it, but like it's it's more than the sum of its parts when you're at a physical show. And that is the question. And so when you asked me earlier, like, what do I tell people? How do I explain what I do? And so now over the past year, when I talk to people about it, like, what do you do? I'm like, well, I make conventions, but we can't make conventions anymore. And they're like, so what do you do? And I'm like, that's the question, isn't it? Like, I don't fucking know.
There's pain in that. Oh,
it's awful. I hate myself.
Yeah, largely. God, I love you for that. Largely, there's this understanding when you're and you spoke to it really well. Taking a cup and pouring it in the ocean, right? As opposed to, maybe they aren't fish in a barrel, but they certainly are fish in a stocked lake when we're in a convention center, right? I mean, they're there for a very specific purpose. Not all of them are there for the same purpose, but a certain percentage of them are. And so you're playing the odds. And in the digital game, those odds are just far too high. You have to change the way the game is played, right? And building from scratch is really difficult. So the pain becomes very perceptible, if that makes sense. You can perceive it much more acutely because especially when you're the world leader. I mean, there's nobody better at this than our company at doing these shows. I don't have any real compunction about saying that. And when you're thrown into a landscape where you're no longer the best, it's a hard place to be. Luckily, I think we have the right people to make us the best, but it's a very difficult place to live. We talked a little bit about the pain of losing people, but as we swim our way, to beat a metaphor to death, to a world where live events are back, do you see what you're learning now from a digital perspective and how fans behave in the enormity of the internet? Any way forward to incorporate some of what you learned there into the live events that we have currently scheduled on the books for 2021 and into 2022?
I mean, yeah, of course. And I feel like if I said no, I'd get fired. But
no one's going to listen to this podcast. Don't worry.
No, I do, and I don't. And I can't see a clear path through right now. I have every confidence in our leadership and to steer us through it. It changes. The short answer is it changes day to day. Some days I'm like, yeah, it makes all the sense in the world to me. Other days, like, I don't understand. I don't get it. But to our earlier discussion, like, we're gonna fail through it. Like, we're gonna fail, and we're gonna figure it out, and then we're gonna get better at it. And these things are iterative, like anything in life. Like, it gets better as you do it over and over again.
You don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know.
It's something that I've talked about a lot with a lot of different people on the show, and it's I think it's particularly resonant here, obviously, because it just keeps repeating itself, to your point. But it's for me, it's like, selling booth space to guys who have been buying booth space for, in some cases 30 years. Not a very difficult gig. I got to be honest, right? Like, building relationships is my forte. It's what I'm good at. But, selling digital ads to that same guy who's been buying booth space for 30 years, that's more of a challenge. That's a different, especially when that guy doesn't have any e-commerce to speak of. So what are you going to do, right? You got to go different places. You got to do different things. And it's like with anything, it's hard. And it sounds like we're complaining. And I guess to some degree we absolutely are. But it's all very interesting in terms of the way that all of this is going to adapt. As we speak, like you talked about, it's March 1st, and San Diego Comic-Con, which is not run by ReedPop, just announced today that they are moving off their July dates yet again this year. There won't be a traditional 4-day San Diego Comic-Con for the second time in 2 years, and the landscape has officially changed. Things are going to be very different when we get back, and I'm not just talking about a capacity standpoint. I'm talking about the way that shows are consumed. Have you thought about that at all? And have you thought about?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
God. Oh man, all the time. Like, okay, like perfect example. Like one of we always try to build new things every year at our show. That's kind of like our MO. It's like, okay, cool. Like, you perfected the thing that you fucked up last year and you've got it on a rinse and repeat. What's the new thing that you're going to fuck up so that next year it'll be great? Or what's the new thing that you're going to pilot? Like, I'm always, whether consciously or subconsciously, I'm always trying to do that, at least, like, try to find one or two new things to mess with. And like last year, 2020, thank God, again, we talked about this, but we did get to run C2E2 in 2020, which is insane. But we did it. We bought like a big road case, like one of those big, like, coffin sized road cases that you like put a bunch of band equipment in, and we filled it with like fun stuff for our family area on the show floor. We have this family HQ show feature. We do arts and crafts, and there's stuff to play with. And we spent like $1,000 on stuff on Amazon, like stuff that you would see in like a daycare center, like foam play mats and safety scissors and clay and crayons and markers and like a little ball pit and just like stuff to fill the area out, stuff to entertain the kids. And like when it was all done, we put it all back in the road case and shipped it back to Connecticut. All that stuff's good for the garbage. We can't use that stuff again. Nobody's gonna touch that stuff. Like, no matter what. Like, what's the point? Like, no one's gonna use it on site, and if you and it's not worth the manpower to disinfect it every 20 seconds. So like, it's useless.
Well, it's fascinating, right? Because it goes in the same line as this. You're absolutely right. But I was watching TV the other day, and Jamie and I, my wife and I, are fans of these guys called the Impractical Jokers, and they're on True TV, and they're back. They have new shows all of a sudden, and you can tell very distinctly the difference between the shows that were taped pre-COVID and during COVID, right? Because there's social distancing going on, and there are masks here and there.
Is it like soap operas where they're like making out with a mannequin? Have you heard about that? Like, on soap operas, they can't kiss now, so they kiss a mannequin, or they bring in their wives or husbands and like put them in wigs and have them do the makeout scenes with their significant others.
I have not heard this. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's really funny.
But what I'm getting at is that when I ingest any media now, where, and I could use the same example because we watch not MasterChef, Hell's Kitchen as well, which was obviously taped long ago, long before COVID. But when I'm watching media and people don't have masks on and they're next to each other, I go, wait, what's going on? Why is this?
It freaks me out.
How fast did our brains change? You know what I mean? It really speaks to how quickly the way that we think can evolve. Because now, if I don't see people next to each other on TV with a mask, I go, this doesn't compute.
Doesn't feel right.
My brain doesn't like this.
And I mean, to your point, like it's completely retroactive. Like I rewatched The Sopranos in quarantine, a show I've seen a bunch of times. And like, when they'll go into a grocery store and not be wearing a mask, I'm like, oh, it makes me itch. And I'm like, this is a show that was filmed 20 years ago.
Well, and by the same token, I remember thinking to myself on several occasions, like if I'm out in public in a heavily populated area pre-pandemic, seeing somebody with a mask on going, why are they wearing a mask?
Fucking weirdo.
What's that about?
I'm not dirty, you son of a bitch.
It's a really fascinating thing that our brains can adapt so quickly. And hopefully we're able to adapt in kind in the live event business. I'm anxious to get back. I'm anxious to see and be with my people. And I'm sure I speak for everyone else that has anything to do with the live events business. I generally, Chris, I like to end these shows with just a dose of inspiration. And the question I have for you next, I want you to think about, because it generates a lot of conversation, and I think depending on how it's worded, it can be a pretty hostile question if you word it the wrong way. But you've done what you've done in your career to this point. You've worked for pretty major corporations in the comic industry. You've done a lot. A lot of people know you. Now you're running content for the 4 domestic ReedPop shows, including New York Comic Con, which is the most attended comic convention in the world. Well, in North America, put it that way. You run content for New York Comic Con, which is the most attended convention in North America. Are you proud of yourself?
Oh, hell no. Come on, Gabe. Come on, what the fuck do you think? Of course not. No. Is to expound on that a little bit. My own insecurities and my own hangups have caused me to place far too much self-worth on my job and my career. And being that it is at the lowest point that it's ever been, no, I'm not. Will I be there again? Yeah. I mean, I'll bounce back. We'll bounce back. Cons will come back. They're not going away forever. But it's ironic, and it's kismet, and it's funny, and it's sad that we're recording this episode on the 1-year anniversary of that wrestling show that we put on together, which is the proudest moment I've ever had in my professional life. I walked into that skybox early. It was just you and a couple of other people. And I just started crying. Like, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that we did it. It was so unreal. And so here we are a year later. And I am at the lowest point I've ever been professionally. I'm in the worst shape I've ever been in my life. I have a whole host of mental health issues that I didn't have this time last year. So no, I'm not. But I'm not upset about it. I think that I think that that's it's temporary. Like there's no permanence to this, no matter which way you swing it. Whether that be on a personal level or on a global scale for COVID. So like, if there's one thing that I've always been good at, it's just been like quietly internalizing my own pain and suffering. So I'm just gonna keep doing that, and we'll be okay.
You know what psychiatrists call that, right?
I do not.
Maladaptive behavior.
Okay. Well, I got that. That is me in spades then.
So, well, no, I'm going to dig into that a little bit. What role does pride play for you?
It does motivate me. I think anyone who says it doesn't is lying. I think that if you were to take a microscope to me, like, you would say that like pride and ego certainly are motivators for me. So having both of those brought to their absolute low has certainly affected my productivity and my desire to be productive, and quite frankly, my desire to crawl out of the hole. Like, it's tough. And I've always generally and genuinely considered myself a happy, upbeat person, and I still do. It's not that I don't. But I have a newfound respect